welcome back to Unimonks. My name is 𝗛𝗏𝗧𝗢𝗏 Chauhan and I'll be teaching you for the CUET history domain. In today's class, we're going to continue with the chapter on the Mahabharata. Alright? And the first subtopic for today is social differences. Now, the ideal of the caste system or the Varna system was laid down in the Dharma Shastras and the Dharma Sutras. Alright? They were a set of hierarchically ordered social categories. Alright? Now, according to these social categories, the Brahmins were supposed to be at the top, whereas the Shudras were at the bottom. And between the Brahmins and the Shudras came the Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas. Alright? To sort of make the foundation of the Varna system stronger, the Brahmins said that the Varna of a person was determined by their birth. Alright? And several more rules come up with this, that the Varna of a person cannot be changed throughout their life. Alright? Once you're born in that Varna, you belong to that Varna forever, and your descendants also belong to that Varna. Okay? It was basically extremely rigid. Alright, the caste system, the Varna system was extremely rigid. And we'll notice this, you'll notice why it was and how it was rigid throughout as I go through the chapter. Okay, now the right occupation. The Sutras and the Shastras contain the right occupations of the four Varnas. Alright, so for example, the Brahmins were supposed to study and teach the Vedas. I write it in short form, alright? Just listen to what I'm saying. Study and teach the Vedas, okay? They were supposed to perform sacrifices, and they were supposed to accept gifts, alright? Gifts in the form of donations, whatever, but accept gifts. The Kshatriyas, okay, they were supposed to engage in warfare, protect the people and the kingdom, alright? They were also supposed to perform sacrifices and rituals, and similarly, they were supposed to accept gifts as well, okay? They were also supposed to give gifts, okay? Now, the Vaishyas were supposed to be either traders, or they were supposed to be farmers, practice pastoralism, alright, or they were supposed to be artisans, okay? And lastly, the Shudras. The Shudras were supposed to serve the higher Varnas. Higher, I put in double inverted commas, okay? Higher Varnas. To reinforce these norms, the Brahmins evolved certain strategies, okay? 2-3 strategies they used. I'll just erase the last part. I'll write it down here for you, okay? So the first strategy was to make sure that the kings enforce this in their kingdom, okay? The kings had to make sure that their their subjects were following the Varna system, okay? Number 2, they gave it a divine origin, alright? That the gods wanted them to be like this, okay? The gods have said that, you know, this is the Varna, this is how I have decided you are going to be divided in society, and therefore you have to follow my word, because my word is the last word, alright? These are the 2 most important strategies that they developed, that they evolved to make sure that the Varna system was followed rigidly, alright? Now, non-Kshatriya kings. Kings, because I talked about it previously, Kshatriyas were supposed to engage in warfare, they're supposed to protect their people, protect the kingdom, right? So, it was indirectly assumed that the kings were supposed to be Kshatriyas, okay? But we see several important lineages that had different origins, okay? They were not particularly Kshatriyas. For example, the Mauryas, okay? Their lineage is heavily debated. Now, the Buddhist texts say that they were Kshatriyas, but the Brahmins, the Brahmanical texts, they say otherwise. They say that the Mauryas belong to a low origin. Now, who knows what is right? Who knows who's saying the truth, okay? But this is one example. Now the Mauryas' direct successors, the Shungas and the Kanvas, were Brahmins by origin. Okay? Apart from that, the Shakas. Now, we've talked about them in the previous chapter as well. The Shakas came from Central Asia. They were regarded as 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏. 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏 are outsiders, okay? Outsiders, or a even worse word to call them is barbarians, okay? They were considered outsiders and barbarians. But these outsiders knew exactly how to establish power, okay? So one of the most important rulers of the Shaka dynasty, Rudradaman, rebuilt the Sudarshana Lake. Okay, the Sudarshana Lake was very important to the people of the Hindu tradition. All right, a lot of rituals were performed there. So, in order to establish his power, in order to make sure that the people understand that he's a real king, he is their ruler, he rebuilt the Sudarshana Lake. Okay. Now, a Satvahana ruler, 𝗏𝗓𝗧𝗏 Sri Satakani, he called himself a unique Brahman and a destroyer of the pride of Kshatriyas, which is very weird, considering that he was supposed to be a Kshatriya, right? If you want to be a ruler, according to the norms, you have to be a Kshatriya. But he considered himself a Brahman, all right? Another very sort of iffy thing about him is that he ensured that there was no intermarriage between the Varnas in his kingdom. Alright, but he entered into a marriage alliance with a king of Rudradaman. Rudradaman are Shaka ruler, who was considered a 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏. Okay, so as I said previously, it depends on the convenience, on their convenience. Okay, what is convenient for them, they'll follow. What is not, they'll forgive. Alright. Now, Jatis and social mobility. Jati was also based on birth. Jati is a concept, okay? But the number of Jatis is not fixed. That's a little wrong. It's not fixed, okay? Brahmanical authorities, Brahmins, when they encountered new people, okay, new groups of people, they classified them as Jatis, okay? Because you already have your 4 Varnas, but apart from the Varnas, now come the Jatis, okay? So, for example, Nishads, okay, or Nishadas. Now, Nishadas were forest dwellers. One of the most important Nishadas is mentioned about in the text of the Mahabharata. You have to tell me. It's a very famous story. We've heard it, we've read it from ages. Okay, we've been listening about it from ages. You please know these stories, okay? These are little facts that you need to keep in mind. I hope you know them, because you are going to have to tell me in the comments down below, okay? Quickly, go to the comments down below, tell me what Nishad I'm talking about, okay? His name starts with E. There, I gave you a clue, okay? Now, apart from the Nishadas, there was another Jati called the 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏. 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏 were blacksmiths, okay? Now, Jatis with the same occupation were organized into guilds and shrenis. Obviously, it's convenient. You form your own community, okay? Then you can live together. You can help each other out, right? These guilds and shrenis became a community, okay? We know about one such guild from the Mandasore inscription belonging to the 5th century. The Mandasore inscription was commissioned by a guild or a shreni of weavers, okay? Weavers who originated from Gujarat. They moved to Mandasore, which is in current day Madhya Pradesh, okay? They moved to Mandasore because they'd heard a lot about the kind and generous king of Mandasore, okay? And that is like a basic story. What the inscription essentially talks about is how hard the journey was for that community to uproot and move, okay? Women, children, male, female, everybody, okay? Old, new, everybody just uprooted their lives and went to a new place. It was a hard journey. This is a very important inscription to understand the people of the time, the regular, the ordinary, the lives of the ordinary people of the time. All right? Now, subordination and conflict, okay? Social divide obviously came up with the Varna system, obviously, correct? A category that came up because of this social divide was of the untouchables. Okay, now rituals were sacred, were considered sacred. Okay, and ritual performers were considered pure, but there were certain activities that were considered polluting. Okay, that it's not a nice activity. The general masses should not be committing these, should not be taking part in these activities. Activities such as being an executioner, okay, and discarding dead bodies, okay, discarding dead bodies. These were considered as polluting activities, and the people who performed these activities were called chandalas, okay, or chandals, okay. Now, therefore, because these activities were considered polluting, these chandalas were considered untouchables, okay, because they were polluted people, okay. The duties of the chandalas were laid down, okay, as a social norm. Now, what were these duties? Number one, they were supposed to live outside the village, okay, live outside the village, use discarded utensils, what else? Wear jewelry made of iron, okay. They weren't allowed to use precious materials, okay. They were sort of basically seen as social outcasts, okay. Therefore, they weren't allowed to be a part of society in general, correct? Live outside the village. Why? For why? Correct. They're also people like all of us. Why are they supposed to live outside of a village just because they're executioners? Right? Now, apart from this, they were supposed to wear clothes of the dead, They weren't allowed to walk around the village at night, okay? No walking around the village at night, okay. And the last of their duties was to be executioners and discard the dead bodies of people that had no relatives, okay. Now, two Chinese travelers, Faxian, who came in the 5th century, and Xuanzang, who came in the 7th century, talk about these duties, okay, these sort of social norms that prevailed at the time. Faxian said that the chandalas, okay, or the untouchables, were expected to sound clappers, okay, sound clappers whenever they were walking at the street, so that people that were walking around could move away, so that their shadow, like the untouchable shadow, does not fall on them and pollute them. Just these ideas are so, I don't have words, okay. So this is one, and then Xuanzang talks about how scavengers and executioners were supposed to live outside of the village. So you know that these weren't just like written, okay, these were followed. These duties, these social norms were followed also, okay. Now, resources and status, gendered access to property, okay. Obviously, talked about this before, women were not allowed, they were not given resources from their family. They did not have access to the resources of the family they were born into, okay. According to the Manusmriti, the paternal estate was to be divided equally among the sons after the death of the parents, okay, with the elder son getting a special share, okay. Women, the daughters of the family, got no share, but they were allowed to retain gifts in the form of stridhan. Stridhan was given to them when they got married, at the eve of their marriage, okay, to take some money, to take some sort of whatever, money, jewelry, something like that, to their family, to the family they were getting married to, you know, to have some sort of possessions in their name, okay. Now, her children could inherit this stridhan, but her husband had no claim on it, okay. So this is one concept, but then the Manusmriti also talks, warns women to not hoard property and other valuables, okay. So make it make sense. Why are they have access to stridhan, they have their valuables on them, but they're not allowed to hoard it, correct? So what are they supposed to do with it? One example of a woman with access to resources, with some sort of, who had the ability to exercise power, is Prabhavati Gupta. Okay, she comes up, I think, for the third or the fourth time. Okay, upper class woman, had access to resources, daughter of Chandragupta, married into the 𝗌𝐀𝐇𝐀𝐁 kingdom. All right, because she had access to resources, she exercised power. Okay, reiterating this. Varna and the access to property. Now, the Varna system also regulated a person's access to property or a group's access to property. Ideally, the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas are supposed to be the richest, okay? And social realities, these social realities are depicted in traditional texts, okay? There is written evidence that the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas were usually the richest out of all people belonging to all backgrounds, okay? There were though some examples of poor Brahmins as well, but that's a different talk in itself. Now, the Buddhist texts, they criticize this, okay? They criticize the Varna system in general, and they obviously, in turn, criticize this regulation to access to wealth as well, okay? They said that social differences are not natural or inflexible, okay? They're not determined by birth. God did not tell you to be socially different, okay? It is a very man-made concept. We'll talk about this when we start studying the next unit on Buddhism, okay? We'll talk more about this. But these ideas, especially the caste system, was heavily criticized in the Buddhist texts, all right? But there was an alternative to sharing wealth, okay? As I said, regional variations, okay? All these texts were not taken at face value by everybody, okay? Different people had different ideas. For example, in ancient Tamilakam, Sangam literature gives stories and poems about people, about men who controlled resources, okay, who had access to resources, who controlled those resources. They were expected to share them with people who weren't as fortunate as them, okay, and they did so. It wasn't just said that you're supposed to do this. They did it. They shared their wealth and their resources with people who weren't as fortunate as them. All right. That's it for today's class. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, if you want to give some fun fact, ask a trivial doubt, leave it in the comments down below. And for more such informational content, subscribe to Unimonks. Thank you for watching. Bye.